All right, welcome to the December 12th, 2023 Aries Cottage and Python user group meeting, the last meeting of 2023. We'll cancel the meeting in 2 weeks. So this will be the last meeting. We'll see everyone again in 2024 for the next one. Lots to talk about with this one in this meeting, just tons of stuff with the big thing being the OpenID for VC's plugin demo. We're looking forward to that. And an update on a whole bunch of things that are going on. So we'll cover those as we go. We are recording the call. We'll post it after. Reminder, this is a Linux Foundation meeting. So the antitrust policy is in effect. It's also a Hyperledger Foundation meeting. So the code of conduct is in effect. Let's be good to one another. Anyone want to introduce themselves that's new to the call, or anyone have any announcements they want to make at this time? If so, please step up to the microphone and speak. All right. Don't really have any announcements. I don't think there's any that we need to go over, so we'll just jump right into the contents. Ian, you want to get started with where you are on OnCreds RS? Just a brief update.
Sure. Yeah, the brief update is that all the code from the AnonCreds RS branch has been merged over to main. We've created a new wallet type called ASCAR AnonCreds. So when you run ACA-Pug with wallet type ASCAR, it loads the ASCAR CredX libraries. When you run it with wallet type ASCAR AnonCreds, it loads the new AnonCreds library, adds a bunch of additional AnonCreds endpoints. Most specifically, the schema and CredDef endpoints are now under, when you run it under ASCAR AnonCreds, they are under the AnonCreds set of endpoints. So those have moved. The endpoints for issuing credentials and requesting proofs should work exactly the same when you use credential type Indy. It'll just use the AnonCreds libraries under the covers. And the revocation endpoints have been updated as well. So when you run with ASCAR AnonCreds, the revocation endpoints are there, but they're different.
Right.
We're currently working on updating the testing. So Jamie is adding some additional unit tests for the new AnonCreds code. I've gone through and updated the integration tests, but I'm just reviewing those, and I'm just going to see where we need additional coverage. And I've tested it with the Aries Agent Test Harness. There's a few issues running the Aries Agent Test Harness with ACA-Pug with the AnonCreds code, so I've created a couple of issues in the Aries Agent Test Harness repo. So that's where we're at. In terms of outstanding functionality, the most significant things are adding support for the endorser. So the new AnonCreds code doesn't support the endorser yet, so that's some additional work we need to do. And we also need an upgrade script to upgrade from an ASCAR to an ASCAR AnonCreds wallet, because the data formats that AnonCreds stores are a little bit different.
Excellent. Good progress. That's awesome. Okay. Let's jump into the, I was thinking of the other updates, but let's, Daniel and Shara, I wanted to give you folks time to go over it. So jump in and take over, and I will stop sharing.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to give a demo of our OpenID for verifiable credentials issuance plugin. This demo implements OID for VCI spec draft 11. We are using the Spherion mobile app, which also supports the OID for VCI spec draft 11. The goal of this demo is to be able to issue JWT VC JSON credential using OID for VCI. credit to Daniel Bloom and Adam Burdett from Indicio on development there on the call as well for questions after the demo. And thank you to Alex Walker for UI work as well. So this demo shows our plugin interoperating with Spherion. As an issuer, we register the credential we want to be able to issue. As a holder, we connect to the issuer, give them the information about us that we want in the credential. We scan the credential offer and accept the credential. We implemented this ACA-Pug plugin to expose new public endpoints used in OID for VCI, as well as admin endpoints for managing the records used to issue OID for VCI, JOT-VC, JSON credentials. So the admin server allows us to extend the controller from plugins and add new endpoints for managing records, but we also needed publicly accessible HTTP endpoints to present and exchange tokens for credentials. So the plugin starts up a separate AIO HTTP server that it uses for the OID for VCI endpoints. The plugin adds, yes, question from Patrick.
Just a quick question. These public endpoints, are they hosted at the same endpoint as the admin API, or is there a possibility to make a different interface?
Let's see. So these are the three public endpoints that we've created to get the credential, issuer metadata, the issuance token, and to issue a credential. These are just the ones that we needed to implement for the pre-auth code flow.
And I do believe that those are required by the OpenID spec, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. So there is a separate server, like a separate web server running on a separate port for the OpenID for VCI endpoints. Yeah. So
I could expose them on the different domain if I wanted to.
Right.
Than the admin server. Perfect.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for your question. So the plugin adds 2 records to assist with the flow. We've got the credential supported record. This tracks information for issuing and describes the type of credentials that the issuer can issue. And it includes the issuer metadata as well, the format identifier of the credential. We also have implemented the exchange record, which tracks dynamic user information. It contains the credential subject, which has the values for the credential. And like I said, we are demoing the pre-authorized code flow today. So as described in the spec, before initiating the flow with the wallet, the credential issuer first conducts those steps required to prepare for the credential issuance. And so the pre-authorized code is sent by the credential issuer to the wallet. We don't need to use the authorization endpoint in this flow, so we have not implemented that. And the wallet exchanges the pre-auth code for the access token directly at the token endpoint. Let's see. So what makes this exciting is that this plugin adds new supported protocol for issuing JOT-VC credentials and prepares for other credential formats like SD-JOTs. We have documentation here in the README in the OID for VCI directory. There's as well a diagram that I'll walk through quickly before we go to the demo, just because some of those steps are happen in the background during the demo. So we've got Alice, the holder, who controls her wallet. Here I'm acting as Alice. We have the controller, which calls the admin endpoints. The public endpoints, like I said, are called by the Spherion wallet. And then we have ACA-Pug core as well that handles signing and storage. So we start off, like I said, with registering the types of credentials that we support using the credential supported record, registering the issuer's DID as well. Then Alice opens the browser with the form, fills in the credentials in the values for her credential and submits the form. The controller then creates an exchange record, which includes the values that Alice just submitted. For this demo, we are not worrying about the PIN. So next, the controller calls the credential offer endpoint, which triggers the browser to redirect to a credential offer for Alice in the form of a QR code. Alice scans the QR code using her wallet, sending her pre-authorization code. The wallet then calls the public routes to receive the issuer metadata so that it has an endpoint for the issuer, which it uses to send the pre-auth code to the issuer endpoint and receive the access token in response. Then it uses the access token to send the credential request. Then we bring in, this is ACA-Pug core. ACA-Pug verifies proof of possession of the keys and verification of the signature, grabs the credential values from the exchange record, signs and returns the JOT and stores the exchange result. And then the credential gets sent to the wallet. We notify the controller that the credential has been issued. And then those records are consumed once the exchange is finished. Alice's browser is polling for the state of the exchange record. And so at the end of that, the controller is notified that the exchange is completed. So just wanted to quickly walk through those steps since they're not all explicitly clear in the demo. But now we can walk through those steps. So here on the left, we have the admin credential issuance preparation page and the Spherion app on the right. In the Spherion app, we have the QR code scanner, notifications page. We've got the wallet. We've got list of contacts as well. I've also pulled up ngrok so that we can see the API calls between the wallet and the public routes. So here on this page, admin credential issuance preparation, we're registering the type of credential that the issuer wants to issue to holders. In the background, we're just using a generic credential example, which creates a record. In this demo, we're just showing a simplified single button click. In production, this process would be dynamic. But yeah, this creates a record for issuance tracking. Next, we are brought to the input form page. Now we're acting as the holder, as Alice. So this page shows the holder's initiation of the interaction with an issuer to request a credential. Here's where we fill in these values. Thanks, Alex, for pre-filling those in. And so this page allows the admin API to create an exchange record for tracking user information. So we can go ahead and submit. This brings us to the credential offer page in the form of a QR code. So we can go ahead and scan that using the app. All right. So now the Spherion wallet follows the OID for BCI flow, requesting an access token and using it to obtain the credential. Let's see, we see on the Spherion app on the right that we're receiving a new contact. First, we need to connect, form a connection with the issuer, which is what we're doing here. Let's see, and then looking at ngrok, we can see that we've made some requests from the wallet to the public endpoints. So first we made this GET request, OID, OpenID credential issuer. So this is where we're grabbing the credential or the issuer metadata. We need that credential endpoint to send the auth code to. And let's see. Then we accept the contact, we are connected. We can also see that we've made this using our pre-authorization code. We have made this post request with the token, or excuse me, we get the token in response from the pre-auth code, and then that triggered a credential post request as well. So then we get the credential in response, which is what we see over here on the right. The calls here that we see that result in 404 responses, those are endpoints that are defined in the OpenID for VCI spec, but are not required for our flow, so we don't have them implemented. So on the Spherion app on the right, we can see our credential offer, we can accept that and look at our credential. We see that it has the same values that we submitted in the input form. And now we have our credential. Yeah, so that's pretty much the flow. Credit again to Daniel Bloom, Adam Burdett, and Alex Walker, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. Tim, looks like you had your hand up first.
Yeah, just a quick one on the well known. The authorization server is not needed, but I think the OpenID configuration should be needed, right? That's where you get the metadata for the credential.
So that would be the OpenID credential issuer endpoint. Actually, that's where the issuer metadata is discovered.
Oh, that one. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so the OpenID configuration is defined by the OpenID specification, and that allows us to do things like publish like keys associated with the issuer for verification through mechanisms outside of the DID world. So it could be implemented, and we could stick the keys associated with the DID that the issuer is going to use for issuance into that endpoint. But I believe Spherion, and we haven't actually gone through the verification process just yet. So there might be some harder requirements on that endpoint in the future as we look to implementing those additional flows. But yeah, if you can stay in the DID space, I think you don't strictly need to use that .well known.
No, sorry, yeah, and I misread the screen. Thank you for the explanation, though.
Yeah, no problem.
On the line.
Patrick.
Yeah, two quick questions. The first one is was there a reason specifically for the draft 11 that was selected for this?
So I'll take.
Yeah, go for it, Daniel.
I can take that one. Sorry. The short answer is that seems to be the most widely implemented. The even shorter answer is that's what Spherion implemented. So that's what we stuck with.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Awesome. Second question. So for the issuer here, what DID method is used?
Using DID JWK, we implemented that because that is what Spherion is using.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry to correct, but minor correction. So there's actually two DID methods that are being used in this flow. Spherion presents a proof of possession using DID JWK. And we're actually signing the credential using a DID key, I believe, is the
okay. The credential subject is what they use when they make the request,
right? And
then use DID key for the issuance. Okay.
Yeah. The way the plugin is implemented, it could also be a DID solve or any other DID that ACA-Pug supports registering.
I could be something interesting with DID Indy.
Yeah, for sure.
If you have already public issuer on the DID Indy network and you want to as well issue like a credential to this method, you could use the same DID that you use to sign your anon creds and your
for sure
these kind of credentials.
Yep. So being a plugin to ACA-Pug, we kind of inherit the support for DIDs that is built into ACA-Pug. We also get to inherit support for DIDs provided via plugin. So if you wanted to do a DID web and you had a plugin that implemented DID web registration, that should also be supported. There might be some details that need to be sorted out in the JWT signature still in terms of making sure that we're recalling the correct verification material, but I think that's also done through a pluggable interface, so it should be relatively extensible to other DID methods, as long as you are willing to do some plugin work for ACA-Pug.
Even you do did GitHub.
Yeah, that would be interesting indeed. Steven?
Yeah, I haven't played with a Spherion wallet. I probably should. I'm intrigued with the fact that it's got contacts and it established a contact there. I assume the contact is one way so that you can send messages from the client. But I'm just wondering about if you've played with a contact information, contact tab in Spherion and what you can do with it.
Yeah, that was something that I wondered about as well. I wondered if it was like a leftover conceptually from DIDCOM or not. I don't know if the Spherion wallet implemented DIDCOM at a previous time or if it still implements DIDCOM. I'm not actually sure. I haven't dug that deep into the Spherion wallet to see. But I think the what is stored in the context of OpenID for VCI is just this issuer metadata, if I had to guess, and like associating the URL with this metadata. So
Okay.
I don't think it goes very deep, and yeah, it would be unidirectional, given that OpenID for VCI is a very much client-server oriented protocol as opposed to a peer-to-peer protocol as in DIDCOM. There's no way for the issuer to contact the holder asynchronously. It always has to be the holder who contacts the issuer.
Okay, and there's, yeah, so if you click with this, it's not a chat interface or anything like that.
No,
It's
yeah.
just these contact. Okay, I get it. It just has the history of what you did with that contact.
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you. And I suppose it would have a verifier history as well, so that's interesting.
Right,
But
yeah.
yeah, got it. Different from what we talk about when we say contact.
Indeed, yeah.
Awesome, any other questions?
Maybe one more. So you say it's extensible to support other DID methods for the issuance. Are you in any way sort of dependable on the wallet to also be able to resolve these methods because before you can use them? Like, let's say you want to use DID-IND for your issuer, would the wallet also be able to verify DID-IND methods?
Yeah, that's a fair question. The wallet and its support for DID methods is a factor in the interoperability and usability of the credentials. I'm not sure how deep Spherion goes in verifying the credentials that it receives. I assume that it will attempt to verify the signatures on the credentials it receives. So if it supports DID-IND or DID-SOV, then it should be able to receive DID-IND, DID-SOV. I think we tested out issuing with DID-SOV, and I think that had, I don't recall exactly what the results of that experiment were at the time. But yeah, certainly on verification, if the holder doesn't care to make sure that the credential itself is valid through some other mechanism, then it could just hold the credential and carry it to a verifier who does support those methods for verification. So it's possible that could just transfer over to the verifier instead of being placed on the holder as well. But I think in implementations that I've dug into so far, most of the time, the holder prefers to verify that the credential is actually verifiable before.
Yeah, I think this should
storing
be
it.
part of the process. Yeah, the OIDC for VC doesn't go into that. Like, doesn't mention a sort of credential verification on pickup.
I don't believe it does. Speaking from memory, so there might be something buried in there, but I don't believe it places that requirement on the holder to make sure that it's verifiable.
Okay, thank you.
Just a matter of interest. I think in a JSON LD world, they don't do that specifically, and that's considered a bad thing. That a holder, that an entity is either a verifier of certain credentials or a holder of any but doesn't verify, because it's considered a security risk to load the context dynamically. So with the in the JSON LD world, a holder would just hold the credentials, would not actually verify them, because that would require loading arbitrary context. So it's not it would not be unrealistic for the holder not to verify something.
Okay,
Interesting.
it would be up to the implementation.
Exactly.
Basically,
Yeah. It would be interesting. The other thing I'm thinking about is, as you're doing this question came up as well today, was I don't know if you played with presenting any of these credentials, but I'm wondering how, when you present, if the wallet is doing things like Aries wallets do, which is finding the credentials that match the presentation request and things like that. But
Yeah,
that's
so we have not gone deep on verifying the credentials that we've issued yet. So that's definitely something that we're going to be doing in the future. But yes, the OpenID for VP protocol is, it essentially adopts the presentation definition specification from diff, which has all these filters and other constraints that enable the holder to filter its list of credentials based on certain attributes and decide which ones will be used to fulfill the presentation. So there must be some kind of structure in there for that. Yeah.
some kind of processing of the credential on receipt. It's not just storing the
Right.
credential and that's it. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Interesting. Thanks.
Cool. Other questions?
Great. Awesome. Thank you for the time.
Excellent.
is there a public version of this we can play with, or we would need to deploy it ourselves?
We do not have a hosted instance of it anywhere. So yeah, you'd have to Docker compose up in the demo directory of the plugin right now. Yep.
Cool.
All right. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Congratulations. Great work. Over to update on eliminating unqualified bids, did peer, AFJ interop, where we are. Daniel?
Unfortunately, not a ton new to say since the last time I think we talked about this. I did get the did peer 1 PR ready to go, and that's been merged in. And that came with a number of other simplifications and improvements surrounding the handling of DIDs and connections, particularly unqualified DIDs within ACA-Pug. And then I've rebased the did peer 2 PR that I had open on top of that work. The time that I've spent on this work recently has been in getting myself up to speed on the integration testing side of ACA-Pug, since that's ultimately what kind of needs to happen next with these changes, is making sure that we're doing it correctly. So I have some small commits that I pushed this morning to add integration tests for that. And I see now that they are currently failing. So I'll be investigating that and continuing to make progress there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then did peer 4 would be next once you complete.
Right. Yeah.
I did put in a couple of PR or a couple of issues into AATH, and hoping to get Sheldon, who's on the call, some time to work on those, so that we can get some AATH integration tests running across repositories. I do see the AFJ folks are working on these same issues, working on did peer 2, working on did peer 4 implementation. So I think we should be, there's active work going on in the different repos to move this forward. So we're getting there.
Sure. And I've been keeping an eye on the AFJ progress as well, and contributing to some questions over there. So yeah, I was really excited to see progress. That one was left open for a little while, I think, as the did peer stuff kind of stabilized a little bit, and then Ariel's picked it back up. So yeah, making good progress on the AFJ side as well.
Okay. Any questions on the eliminating unqualified bids? Again, a lot of discussion on that and updates at the Aries working group call. That'll be tomorrow. NDVDR progress, pool management, there have been updates in the pool management. Caching is now implemented in NDVDR. We do have to make an update to ACA-Pug and other Aries frameworks using NDVDR, but that caching becomes enabled. Now that is only for pool caching, I should add that. We talked about doing domain transaction caching in NDVDR and felt it was better that the caller would do that, you know, ACA-Pug and or AFJ and Aries VCX would do the caching. So that is left at a higher level. That's the plan at this point. But in the meantime, we do have pool caching, which should significantly should help make it easier for all the Aries frameworks to not get hung up on these inactive nodes any more than they need to, which is on the very first call. Andrew also implemented a automatic detection if the pool does change, so that if a node is added to the validator pool of an Indy network, that will be detected and a refresh done automatically and update the cache. So those are all improvements in the Indy VDR area, which we think will help the progress. Alex, I think the load generator is looking good. We're almost ready with it to make use of it within BC Gov. I don't know if you had any specific update, you or Kim wanted to provide any update on that, but load generator is looking good.
No updates to give, or at least nothing to say on it. But yeah.
For those that haven't played with Aries Akrita, there is now a developer quick start that allows you to run everything on a single machine. It spins up an issuer, spins up a mediator, defines how to create a schema for the issuer, and then runs everything in a single Docker compose, so you can see the activities that happen, what statistics are generated, and so on. So lots of good progress there. Thanks for that. And finally, anon-creds in W3C VC format. We met Monday between the three groups, working on Code with Us's and working on that. So the Rust work is almost complete. It is complete, and we have one more open issue that we are trying to resolve. So all of the API updates to enable the issuance of anon-creds in W3C VC format and the generation of a verifiable presentation in W3C VC format have been implemented. What is remaining is one question, which is the folks on the W3C data integrity team, folks like Manu Sporny and Dave Longley from Digital Bazaar are recommending that we try not to have an anon-creds JSON LD context, and we try to essentially hide all of the additional data needed in a way that no additional @context file is needed for anon-creds. So we're looking at what the ramifications of that would be. Looks like it's mostly doable with open questions around revocation and around revocation and the use of predicates. I think we can, if we can figure out the revocation one, the predicate one is just coming up with a convention. Revocation is more interesting, so we're having a longer conversation about that. So there may be some final tweaks in the actual format and a decision made as to whether we need a context or not. But other than that, discussion tomorrow at the Aries Working Group call will be about some ideas that the AFJ folks, Timo wants to put forward about a new Aries attachment format for presentations, or sorry, for credentials and presentation, or sorry, issuing and presenting proofs, issuing credentials and presenting proofs. That is in addition to the current Indy format, which really should be called the AnonCreds format. And in addition to the what's currently called the W3C format, which is potentially should be called the JSON LD format, since it covers that. So what Timo is looking for is seeing about sort of taking all the lessons learned, but including in that the ability to do JWTs and SD JOTs, so JOTs and SD JOTs, I believe. So he posted something today in the AFJ group, cross-posted an issue in ACA-Pug that points to what his design is, and he'll be presenting that tomorrow. So great if people can take a look. Patrick.
Just two quick questions for that. So when you mentioned the code and the IPS have updated it, does that include the wrappers, or what's the state for the? Yeah. Okay, so that's done.
The Rust code, the ACA-Pug or the Python and JavaScript wrappers are all included in that. Yeah.
Awesome. Now for the other point about well, I think hiding is not the best choice, but like
True.
Relying on the existing context.
Yes.
It sounds to me like this would be a lot more feasible with the data model version 2. Was that part of those discussions, or?
We're talking about that. To a large extent, the way it would be done is we would use data. The proof type would be data integrity proof. The crypto suite would be AnonCreds, which would not. By doing that, we wouldn't need an additional context for that. And then any extra fields, and notably the extra fields we're talking about are the schema ID and the CredDef ID would go into the proof value, proof signature. So they would be, if you will, hidden. And the reason I use the word hidden is they would not be visible to someone looking at the credential, which is kind of annoying. In order
the ID or the types?
The IDs.
The IDs, okay.
Yeah. So the only visible sign that you're using AnonCreds is the crypto suite would be AnonCreds, and then almost anything specific to Indy would be in the proof value field. So it would be essentially encoded in that, and in order to see the schema ID and the CredDef ID, you'd have to decode the proof value.
So that means like there wouldn't be a credential schema section in the VC itself. It would be removed, and it would be, and same for the status, like the revocation status, or?
So that's not so obvious, and that's the conversation. So we could do that, remove the credential status. The alternative we could also do is have an AnonCreds list, status list 2023 or whatever, that could be used for both. There's no reason not to use the existing revocation scheme with other than AnonCreds, because basically you would give the verifier the revocation registry ID plus the credential index, and they could look up in Indy or wherever the AnonCreds revocation registry is. They could retrieve and look at whether the credential is revoked or not. So
something like the bit string status list, or?
Exactly. So it would work from a conceptual perspective the same. You would retrieve,
but that wouldn't. So that would be like using external revocation method. It wouldn't be the AnonCreds revocation. it would be managed differently? Is that
No, the data would be the same. The source data would be the same. The difference would be instead of the holder keeping their credential index secret and passing a non-revocation proof, the holder would pass to the verifier, here's my credential index and here's the revocation registry ID. The verifier would retrieve the data and check to see whether the bit was on or off, essentially.
Yeah.
So that's the debate. If we don't use list at all and there's no evidence that it's a revocable credential and we hide it again in the proof value, then there would be no anon-creds context needed. So that's the discussion we're getting into. I don't know if anyone has JSON LD expertise and interest and wants to weigh in on this, but that's what we're talking about with Manu and Dave Longley and others around JSON LD. He would, Manu would really like us not to have an anon-creds context.
what's the reason? Is that, did he provide like a reason for that?
It makes it harder for, remember, I was talking earlier about, you don't want to dynamically load a context. So a verifier of a JSON LD would normally know they want to verify a particular type of credential, and they would have preloaded all the context, and they would never dynamically load them. That would mean that any wallet using a credential issued with an anon-creds signature attached, even if they're not using anon-creds, would have to load that context. And would have to know about it ahead of time if their security policy was never to load one dynamically.
Yeah. That makes
So
sense.
it makes sense, but it's a bit painful. Okay. I thought we were gonna, that is a long list of things we've gone through. We've gone through it in 45 minutes. So, any other questions or comments people would like to discuss? Any PRs or issues they'd like raised in a discussion format? Patrick.
I just put in two issues on the repo. I'd like to touch on them, but more specifically the one about did web, which can piggyback a bit on the discussion we had for the OIDC issuance methods.
Yeah.
So it's so the new endpoints. So the previous JSON LD sign endpoints of ACA-Pug, you would sort of provide the var key as its own parameter in the request, and that would instruct use this key to sign this payload, and it would not validate. Well, it would do some validation, but it would not restrict you to the issuer parameter that you give in. So you could put in whatever did you want, even if it wasn't related to the key. Now, this is sort of interesting. It puts more responsibility on the issuer to make sure that he's issuing the right issuer ID. With the new endpoint, there is a verification on the issuer or the issuer ID field of the credential to sort of correlate which key to use to sign. And Daniel, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm just making some assumption based on what I've seen in the code and how it works. So what would be interesting as a next step is to enable did web issuance ID, because for example, if I register a key, if I register a did key in my wallet and I want to take the information for verification and host it in a did document on the web and then refer to it with a did web, I feel like all the agent would need to do is just, if it sees that it's a did web, to resolve that document and make sure that one of the keys belong in the wallet. Now, there is a problem with that in the did document you could have many verification keys and you wouldn't know necessarily which one to use. But I think an easy way would be to just use the first one that it finds. Eventually could be other ways to do it. But the reason I think this would be important is a lot of test suites, when they provide example VCs to sign to test your endpoint, they will use didweb. They won't use didkey. So I think this would be very interesting to do. And the same thing for verify. So something I've tried was to use the old JSON LD to sort of sign with a didweb issuer, but then when I come to verify, it will not be able to go fetch that verification key when I refer to it in the didweb. And it will tell me there's sort of a mismatch in the controllers of the keys and the issuer and the verifier. So I think for both the issuance process and the verification, to add a sort of way to resolve the did document and then go get the verification key from there could be interesting, and could also then open the door. I say didweb here, but this would be, in theory, any did method. You know, if any did method, if I can resolve the did document and I've registered the verification key of a key that I've created in my ACA-Pug instance, it should theoretically be feasible. So yeah, this is what I'm suggesting, and this is something I'd like to start to probe around a little bit and see how it works. You know, there's already a way to add a plugin to resolve other did methods, so the functionality is already there. I think there just needs to be a bit of logic to put in there. So
Yeah, indeed. Let's see. So first, calling out that there's an asymmetry between the capabilities in issuance and the capabilities in verification. I believe on the verification side, we should already be in a relatively good state in terms of being able to resolve a wider variety of did methods and verifying credentials from those did methods. But yes, on the issuance side, we're limited to ACA-Pug's built-in capabilities and what's been plugged into ACA-Pug. And the built-in capabilities of ACA-Pug is effectively did-solve and did-key right now. And
but
then
if I have sorry, just if I created my did key in ACA-Pug, I receive my did and my ver key, and then if I host this on a did web, you know, I host this in my verification method, I put the key in there, and ACA-Pug resolves it, couldn't it then sort of create a did key from that resolved key and use the existing signing mechanism and just change the string in the proof verification method? Because it relates to the same key. It's just how the did I used to represent it is different.
I think if we were going to go the route of having did key representations, I think we might as well go down one more layer and just have just a raw key bytes representation that gets used. So I think that abstraction isn't necessarily getting us that much further, and I'd prefer the correctness of having proper registration of those did methods as opposed to transforming them to did keys. The actual operations.
Yeah.
So as an aside, a brief aside, so SIGPA has done some work with adding didweb capabilities to ACA-Pug via plugin. They've committed to open sourcing that work. I'm working with them to get it added to the Aries ACA-Pug plugins repo, like soon. Hopefully, I can open up a PR for that like this week. So that might be one avenue to explore for that.
We should have an ability to put in a untested plugin, if you will, or an work in progress plugin that we can get into the repo that others could pick up. That might be a good way to go for this case, where you don't have time to get it. If you don't have time to wrap it up, but at least get it out there so somebody else could.
Right. And I think their repo itself, the original location for the plugin, is already open, I think. I'll have to check on that. So maybe I can go and dig up a link and drop it into the agenda for this meeting. the main challenge for getting it opened up into the Aries ACA-Pug plugins repo is not actually the state of completion of the plugin. It's actually a DCO and
Oh, right. Oh, gosh.
merging disparate histories, Git histories, which is a bit
Yeah.
of a process. So
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so
All right.
maybe we can capture this on this issue. I'll edit the issue and with that information.
Yeah. So I think there's probably things that could be improved about the process of looking up what key material to use for a given did. The interface for the LDPVC issue endpoint is designed such that it can take either a did or a verification method as the identifier for what the signing keys should be. I believe it's
How
been a
would
minute
you,
since I did that, but
how would you provide the verification method? Would be like in the options?
I believe so, yeah. So
Okay.
as a verification method, and then you can provide the full did URL to the specific key in the did document that you want to use as the signing key.
That's okay. I'm just I'm a bit reticent on relying on an options, because then you sort of diverge from having a interoperable way. Like if you add a dependency, like you need to provide the did verification method and the options. It can be difficult when it comes to testing with if test suites doesn't support it, for example. I think going on the issuer value is fine, but yeah, by saying exactly which verification key to use, it's a bit more precise and
Yeah. So
interesting.
I definitely agree that interoperability is a good goal. Unfortunately, right now, at least for my priorities, it's not a high priority in my mind to adhere to the VC API for this interface in ACA-Pug right now. More than willing to accept PRs and guide implementation to make it more interoperable, but I just don't have the time to sync on making sure that we're making the right decisions there.
Yeah, like me, it's something I'd like to sort of dive into. So I don't know if you could put me in touch with the people at SIGPA working on this, so we could maybe have a chat and see a bit the approach.
Yeah, I can see what I can do for sure.
Yeah, awesome.
All right. Sorry, just wrapping up some extra notes. That completes the meeting. Thanks all for joining. As mentioned, we will not have another meeting in 2023, and we'll see everyone again on this call in 2024. Please join tomorrow on the Aries Working Group to talk about some of the issues that are relevant here. So lots going on there as well. Thanks all. See ya.
Good holidays.
Thank you.
Happy New Year all.